Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the center. Thank you for all being here. Thank you, Celia, always. She seems to be one of our go-to people for treatments and starts off many of our classes. Today's talk was originally going to be on a different subject. I was going to be dealing with Theodore Becker's book, which was The Denial of Death, which was written in 1973. It won a Pulitzer Prize. And I was also going to be using Dr. Bill Tolliver's talk that had a very similar theme. And as I was working with it for hours this week, I realized there's an awful lot of material in that book and in that talk that it's kind of tough for people to grapple with, and I need to spend a lot more time with it. One of the things about it is that they were making the point that all of us are human beings, and eventually we make a transition. And nobody really likes talking about it. Nobody really likes thinking about it. And in the book by Becker, he says, that whole phenomena causes people to do all kinds of things. You know, they build buildings, they do things to externally make their life appear to go on in the world. And there's a certain freedom that comes from really sitting and realizing that I'm here for a brief time. Some of us think and act and get involved in our lives in such a way that there's a denial. There's a denial, and I was allowing myself to process that material, and I don't usually do that, really. And I looked up statistically, okay, well, I'm a man, and I'm so many years old. And then looking up statistically, it doesn't mean any of us have an expiration date in particular. But I thought, okay, well, statistically, men in America pass on at such and such an age. And I thought, holy God. And I'm looking at my age and I'm thinking, boy, Greg, you better get about some living here. So I'm not going to do that talk today because I'm not prepared to do it. But there was it was kind of like really something to explore. And I'll get you ready for it because I'll do it in some week in the future. But squarely looking at the fact that we're not going to be here forever. And we might be here forever eternally. I mean, you look at it that way, right? But physically, we do move on. And it reminds me of a time, I think I was in my 30s, and one of my dear friends was about ready to make a transition. And you've heard me tell this story before. It was New Year's Eve, and I was exhausted and taking care of this individual. And he came to me and my friends. He says, well, we're going out. And he had an IV bag, and he all kind of, it's going to bring it with him. He says, this is not a dress rehearsal that we're living. You got to find a way to make the best of it. And that's really what we do in religious science. All of us move through very, very difficult things. We have rejection, we have losses, people who are close to us make transitions, we feel, we get rejected, sometimes we're even betrayed. We make loads of mistakes while we're learning, and somehow, some way, we need to have whatever it takes to stand up. I'm going to invoke Taylor Swift now and shake it off and go forward. And that requires a certain amount of courage. It's an uncommon courage. Religious scientists are here to practice seeing the good, even when there's no evidence of good. And that's really faith, for lack of a better word. It's a faith in something that's unseen. It's a knowing that things are good even when it's not obvious. But if we practice knowing that there is good and believing that there is good, if that's really what lives inside of us, if we have that positive expectancy and we know that there's God and good at hand, eventually it starts to show up. First, it comes with the realization within yourself that there is God in this, there is good in this, somehow, some way. And as you know that deeply, the world begins to turn. The world begins to shift. That takes work. That is the work that we do. It's the spiritual work. I've been in so many good groups and spiritual communities, but especially the small process groups in these spiritual communities, the spirit groups, where you really develop a faith. And, that kind of faith, using that kind of faith, you really can heal your life. This was the whole basis of Louise Hay's work. You can turn it all around and you can begin to experience good. You can see loveliness when there is no evidence of loveliness. You can see peace when there's no evidence of peace. You can experience wholeness and health when it's not readily apparent. Because if your focus is on the problem always, and if your focus is on what is missing in your life or what's wrong with others, then who has the problem? The universe has to respond to whatever it is, the lens that you're looking through, your perceptual lens, is creating your experience. So we have all kinds of things we teach you here, and there's so many different ways we teach you it's like the same lesson being presented in many different ways. Often I'll say, I could see peace instead of this. When you're in the middle of a story where there's anger and angst and opinion and strong opinion and criticism, and you're beating yourself up or you're beating someone else up or you're judging something, you're miserable, who has the problem? Okay, who has the problem? Basically, I used to think years ago, I would think like there's fish hooks out there, and I'm chomping on one negative thing and I'm chomping on another thing. And then the thing is, when I do that, I'm drawn out of the here and now, and I got myself all stirred up into something. And I'm reminded of the 12-step programs of 42 years ago when I entered one of them, where they said misery's optional. But I was so damn miserable. And I was judging everything, but I was a nice person. So how am this nice person having all this misery? Because there was so much within me that was judging so many things. And talk about, sit there, because you're smart, right? And you have a good analytical mind, and you listen to things that don't add up. And then logically, you judge it, or you judge someone, and you make people wrong. And then it's very, very difficult, because you're going to see them again and again, and it's tough for you to be clean. And by that I mean it's tough for you to be clean and innocent of judgment, because you've already got this running story. And how can I be in a new moment when I'm carrying all this baggage? How can I be in a new moment about people where I think something's gone on and I don't, you never know the whole story. That's the thing I can always promise you. But we're quick to judge, and we're unmerciful. And where does that come from? And it lives within us, and we carry it. And the thing is, we come in as kids, and we take on a lot of baggage from the religions that our parents grew up with, and from the whole body of thoughts that they passed on to us. And you hear me talk often that they're doing the best they can. They didn't try to hurt their children. That isn't the way it works. But we have within us a ton of stuff that becomes our belief system. So here we are, and this is the talk that we'll be having down the road. Hold on a second. We've got some new people. Welcome. Welcome to the center. So the point to that introduction, it basically comes back to the fact that you have the power to turn it around, okay? You have the ability to realize that life is precious, and you have the ability to understand that you don't have to be part of all of that. You can step out of it. You have the ability to see peace instead of whatever it is that you're seeing. I wanted to move into, as a second subject today, an author that I read, and I spent a lot of time with the Course in Miracles when I was younger, probably 20 years ago. And there was an author, Jan Paleski, who was known in the fields of psychiatry and health and metaphysics. He was affiliated with the Course in Miracles. His books added a lot to the New Thought movement. He used many of the techniques that we use, and he also used them when he was a doctor in healing children who had cancer. And he's somebody worth looking up. There's all kinds of attitudinal healing groups throughout the world. And I recall a couple of his best-selling books, one of which was entitled Forgiveness. Another one was entitled Teach Only Love. And then there was Love is Letting Go of Fear, which is the one I think I studied, and I was a part of a group a long time ago. You've heard me say before in many different lessons, in truth, there's nothing outside of you. So what does that mean? Okay, we're truth students here, right? So what is a truth student? I recall a minister years ago at a Unity church telling us all that we were truth students. And I thought, oh, that sounds really good. But I didn't really know what he was talking about. What he was talking about is when you come into a teaching like this, a Science and Mind Center, a Unity, they still call themselves churches, they're not talking about a God above. They're not talking about a God elsewhere. They're talking about a spirit that lives and dwells within you. Okay. And that's very radical to people who come out of a Judeo-Christian system, because the old system has God squarely above with unlimited power and the ability to do all kinds of havoc in the world and with you. And the whole system there is you come into this world and you are born, they will have you think in sin, and you spend most of your life trying to please God and to be good enough so you can enter into another world eventually where you will be happy. And so you're here to live and do good works and curry the favor of this God and pray to this God and hope that this God will eventually deem you worthy to enter heaven. Of course, we don't believe any of that here. Many of the people who come here have come out of those religions, myself included. And so when I was told many years ago in New Thought that we are truth students, so we're talking about a truth where we recognize that there's one energy, there's one life. One. So we spend a lot of time talking about the word oneness. I spent one whole year and a half talking about that one word. It was a third year of studies, and I thought, my God, will they ever stop talking about the word oneness? And we would come together week by week, and in a group we would share what our week was like. And you'd quickly see how everybody was talking about how somebody had done them wrong and how their life wasn't working, and there was bad guys and bad situations. And the interesting thing is we were there to experience and entertain the idea that there is one God operating in all people at all times, including us. And all we would be talking about throughout the year is the opponent, the other person, the bad guy. And ultimately what that class was supposed to do was to help us wake up to the fact that this presence, this power, this God is in everyone and all the time. So it leads us to understand that we live, we move, we have our being in this divine substance, and it's one substance that's in me, and it's in you, it's in everybody in this room. It's not two, it's one. So in this teaching, if you are a truth student, if you're interested in practicing this teaching, then there's a high calling here for you to begin to see, okay, I am as God created me. And as I look out at the people in the room and all the people who are listening on the call, that same God that's in me, that same energy, because some of you don't like the word God anymore, that energy that's in me is in everybody. And it's in the world, and it's in every person and every religion. It doesn't play favorites, okay? The little Muslim child over in another part of the world, or the Egyptian child, or the person in Japan or China or anywhere else. This energy, this divine essence, is in everything and everyone and all the time. And we move, we live, we have our being in this same energy. Deepak Chopra would call it the unitary field. The energy in which we all breathe and we live, and this energy responds to each of us. It doesn't play favorites. In other words, I can't pray to it to have it give me something and not give it to somebody else. I can't pray for my team to beat your team. All the things that people do. It responds to everybody, and it moves through everybody. One life, one energy. And Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of religious science, which is a branch of New Thought, would suggest that there's power in the universe, he said, greater than you, of which you are a part, and you can use the power. Okay, so what does that mean? Again, truth students, one power, one life, that life is your life. Now, you might not know you have that power. You might be coming out of a family where you don't think you're very empowered at all. You might have a low opinion of yourself. You might think, oh my God, if they really knew me, or oh my God, the things I've done. Oh my God, I'm not good enough. And that's common enough. We've grown up in families where we've not thought that we're okay. We just through the socialization and growing up. Louise Hay would say you came into this life as a beautiful being of light, a baby, where all the potential in the world was available to you. And it's true. And we were raised by people who passed on information to us, and they gave us the best they could too. And the thing is, and we brought in a lot of beliefs, and we've gone through our lives, and we've continued. We were given what we were given, and then we went forward, and we've made many mistakes while we've been growing and living. And we've done the best we could with what we knew always. So we come into a teaching now like this, and you encounter books like Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, which I've been teaching and part of since it first came out. And Louise Hay will say, you can turn it around. Whatever. Louise Hay was a student in this particular church center, and she learned here what we teach, and she will say, all healing is self-healing, meaning you have the ability, no matter what your circumstances are right now, to heal your life. You can change the story, you can change your conditions. If you're not experiencing great health, or you're not experiencing happiness and joy, there's something you can do about that. But you need to want to. Louise would say, you begin where you are right now, and she oftentimes said it's like, she said, cleaning a house. Your apartment may be a mess. Well, you begin wherever you are. Your thoughts and your thinking could be filled with anger, full of resentment, negativity. You can be fearful about your job. You can be fearful about the way your relationship is going. You can be really upset. And that type of fear and that type of worry and that type of thinking is going to continue to manifest more of the same in your life. So you come into a place like this and a teaching like this, and you learn how to turn that around. You learn how to stop that negative, that whole negative, what we call train of causation. And how do you begin? Well, you begin by realizing that you're doing it. Louise Hay would say, as I listen to hundreds of people, thousands of people, and all their stories, she'll say on some level, in some way, people are disconnected. They don't believe that things are going to work for them. And so her whole emphasis is learning to love yourself and changing that dialogue around. So that's what we do here. We're truth students. We try to remember that we are inlets and outlets of this divine consciousness. Ernest Holmes would say, again, that there's power for good in you, greater than you, and you can use it. So the first thing you do is you wake up and you recognize that this power that's in the world, in the galaxies, in nature, in every living thing is in you, and you can use it. Well, how does it work? Well, it works by responding to you. It works by, from the movie The Secret years ago, you remember, if those of you who watched it, there was a big genie in the movie. And the genie was always saying, your wish is my command. Your wish is my command. Well, that's illustrating the point that the universe takes you at your own estimation of yourself. If I think I'm successful and I think that I'm good and I have positive expectancy and I'm a lifter and I'm trying to lift people up and do my best and I have positive expectations and I'm really doing my best to lift myself up and others, the universe responds to that. If I'm kind of like living with the whole idea that the world is against me and I can't succeed and it's too late for me, if I'm thinking that everything is bad and it's too late, if this is what I'm predominantly thinking and I have all this worry thought, then the universe responds to that too. So this is something to understand. Life responds to you. Life says yes to you. So the work that we do here on Thursdays in our Thursday classes, we really work on the process of learning to elevate our consciousness, to love ourselves more, and to get out of the blame game. Wherever you find yourself pointing the finger at somebody else, it's always a mistake. We're here to realize, that we're one with this one power. And when we look out at other people, we realize that this power that's in us is in them too. Commonly in New Thought centers, you'll hear people acknowledge one another with a greeting. They'll say namaste, and you might have heard it before. And that would suggest that whatever that's good in me and spiritual in me, I see it and I know it in you. Okay? You grow into the understanding that you live in a world as a spiritual being, you're encountering other spiritual beings, and you can say namaste. And you can realize that every encounter is a holy encounter. If you can understand that you're in a spiritual system where all there is this energy and all there is God, then you're meeting God everywhere. Now, if you're living from a place where you don't see God in anything, if you're in the world and you think everybody is an opponent, or you walk down the streets of your city and you're living in fear and you're living with the consciousness that everybody's trying to get you or do something to you, okay, that's the way you're doing it. As you come into this teaching, we invite you to entertain the conversation that there's one life, one love, and it's in everyone and all the time. Another thing we will present to you is that everyone that you see and experience is doing the best that they can with the consciousness that they have. And that's an interesting thing to consider, because you can observe people doing all kinds of crazy things, right? The old you might be labeling these people as bad and awful and atrocious, and because my God, there's a lot of pain and suffering in the world, right? But this teaching really will have you realize all these folks are evoluting along, and they're doing the best that they can at their level of understanding. Just think in terms of your own life. Everything, if you think back, has everything that you've always done been intelligent? Has it always been brilliant? Have you always been like just wonderfully encouraging everybody all the time? Have you just been so good? I know that that's not been my story. I've had my great moments, but I've had lots of times where I've been in a place that we'll call a disconnect, where I've been lost or I've been in the weeds, and I'd be coming from a place of judgment and anger, and I would be making my life all about what somebody is doing and what they're doing to me in particular. And if I could let that go to keep going on that road, then I'm going to be living my life in some way as a victim of something. And I've got a lot of blame going on. And so as you enter a teaching like this, you really come to grips with the fact that you're creating much of this yourself, okay? So what we have you do here is to take your power back and realize, okay, in truth, we're truth students, remember? In truth, there's nothing outside of me. So I'm creating so much of the things that are going on in my life. And we take our power back and we realize I could be doing it in a different way. When you really start to have your life working for you, you find that you don't really have any problems with people anymore. Because if you have a problem, you start to understand, okay, I have a problem. If you are doing it the other way, you're focused on other people and what they're doing. And then you're minding everybody's business. And you really can, in fact, be seeing peace instead of all of that. So I recall probably somewhere in the late 90s being in a wonderful group where the facilitator always would say, take it back to you. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She'll say, stop talking about what they're doing. Stop talking about what's wrong with them. Start talking about how you're seeing it. And the suggestion was you can see it in another way. I can see peace instead of that. I can understand they're doing the best that they can. I really have the ability to see it differently. This is what the metaphysical approach would ultimately be all about. Learning to see the good, learning to understand that people are in a state of evolution. Everybody here, including me, is evolving, including you. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I mean, kind of the same. But I've grown, I've learned, and there's many things that, I know now that I didn't know then, and there's many things that I might have been able to do at that point in my life that wouldn't interest me anymore. All of life is unfolding, and when you're involved in this teaching for any length of time, you're less and less interested in being involved in what I'll call trivial pursuits, the things that used to, interest you or that you would be involved in. You really get to a point where you just lose interest in it. I sometimes quote Jesus, though not often. I recall the part of his story where his mother was wanting him to do various things, and he replied that I need to be about my Father's business. And it's true for all of us if we're involved in the teaching and the practice. Your friends might be doing a whole bunch of things, involved in a whole bunch of discussions, and find it interesting to be gossiping and find it interesting to just be talking about what's wrong and what's missing. And you might find yourself at age 60 or 55 or 65, and you might think, my God, I don't want to live the rest of my life this way. I mean, you can spend use up a lot of your precious God-given time talking about what's wrong and what's missing. You can turn on the news channels. Just take your pick, because there's no good news that's put on. I mean, you can flip from CNN to Fox and in between, and all the ones that are in between. They're not broadcasting good news. And the thing is, and you can hang out with people who will talk about what's wrong. And if you're just doing that, it's like, oh my God, you kind of like I need to get away from that. And I need to put into my consciousness things that are more life-giving. One of my great teachers years ago said, you live in a time, and this was before YouTube, you live in a time where you can commune with some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. You can contemplate great thoughts. You can listen to really powerful, good teachers. Now I mention YouTube. Always used to be, you can go to these great books and commune with some of the greatest minds that have ever lived. But there's so many ways for you now to literally change the channel so that you can focus on health and healing and wholeness and ideas that will build you up. You can tune into Louise Hay's audios, which are still around, hundreds of thousands of people have been helped by her audios. You can let that information, bathe over your consciousness and lift you up. If you keep on hanging out with the same people, you keep watching the same stuff, and you just allow it into your consciousness, and it just, where's the new thought in any of that is what I want to ask you, okay? It takes a lot of courage to step out of that. Even if you're in a family system, I know some of you struggle with your families. I know I've struggled with my own. To step out of all of that and put your focus somewhere else, it ties into today's attitudinal healing, where you can deliberately say to yourself, I can see peace instead of this. I can see the truth instead of this. I don't really have to dwell in negativity. The old days in the old churches, they would call it the Counsel of the Wicked. Well, what does that really mean? If I'm hanging out with a bunch of people who are talking about what's wrong and what's missing and what's wrong with me and that I'm a sinner, okay, you can do that, but why would you want to do that? Well, why would you want to do that? I grew up in a faith that told me I was born had original sin. I was scarred from birth. I needed to be baptized, and I needed to offer things up, and I needed to keep trying to curry favor with this God to be acceptable. And you come into a place like this, and we tell you were immaculate from the very beginning. You came in with, as an individualization of God itself, you came in with power, and you came in with light, and you were like this amazing creature that's born in the world with existing as pure potential, and there's nothing stopping you. And yet we grew up in families, and we learned things, and we learned good things, and we learned other things, and here we are now as adults. So it's our responsibility now. If you're in a class like this, you show up in a church like this or a spiritual community, and we're telling you, you have the world at your feet. You have power within you that's beyond anyone's comprehension, and you can use it. Okay, so how do you use it? You use it by keeping on noticing what it is that you're thinking, what it is that you're spinning. Thursday nights I ask the question, what's it like being you? What is it that you're carrying in terms of the body, your thoughts? Are you thinking that nobody loves me, nobody cares, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough? Are you carrying some version of, God, the things I've done are really awful, and I just, I've been a failure, whatever it is. And you or you carry a bunch of resentments towards others, that stuff is your stuff, and it's your stuff to get rid of. Otherwise, it's looping around. You know what I mean? It's like an old tape. It's looping around within you. If you keep on thinking, it's too late for me, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough, I can't do this, I'm rejected, my life is so bad. If you keep on doing any of that, The universe responds to that. Every thought you think, I used to hate that. Every thought you think is creating your future. And now I'll edit that thought a little bit. It's really more about the tendency of your thinking is creating your future. If my tendency of my thinking is up and encouraging, and if I'm a person that's really saying yes to life and I'm encouraging people and I really want to extend love and the best of me to others, that's going to come back, okay? If I'm walking around with fear all the time and upset and I'm terrorizing myself with my own thoughts, what do you think is going to show up in my life? I mean, we teach you that you're caused your own experience. We never teach you that you're at blame for anything. We're teaching you about a law, a spiritual law. I'm caused to my own experience. So, life is mirroring my consciousness. And for each of you, life is mirroring your consciousness. So if you look at your life and you're like, God, I don't like what I'm experiencing. Okay, well, then that's a realization. I don't like what I'm experiencing. If you want to have a different experience, then you've got to give a whole bunch of different information. You've got to entertain bigger thoughts. Okay, this is what we call new thought. We need to embrace some of the great thoughts. I am one with the one would be a great thought. I am as God created me is another one from another discipline. I am as God created me in the light and the love and the glory. I am whole and complete, as Louise Hay would say. Louise Hay would have you affirm daily, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am. One of my older teachers would quote a cartoon. He would say, God doesn't make junk. I'm not junk. There's nothing wrong with me. Okay, I might have made mistakes, but I'm not a mistake. Okay? I've made lots of mistakes, but I'm not a mistake. And people have made a lot of mistakes, so my God, stop judging them. They're human beings. They've done the best they could. I mean, my God, we are horrible to people. And when we're being horrible to people, that's really because it's something that lives within us where we're not healed and we're extending our own misery and unhappiness judging other people. So we need to understand that people are human and they're evolving and they're doing the best that they can, and give them a break. We have a lot of work to do always. Where? Within ourselves. When you really begin to love yourself, Louise Hay said, then everything begins to kind of like slow down and work out. You don't really focus on other people. You're more about minding your own spiritual business, and you realize, oh my God, so I was preparing that other talk. I'm 68 years old. I'm looking at the statistics. I thought, geez, Greg, you don't have too many years to turn this whole thing around. I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself. But the thing is, if I want to experience love and joy and peace and happiness, then I don't have time for this other stuff. I really don't. Think how much time I spend on that other stuff for myself. You all can do your version of that. It's like taking a little inventory. Do you really want to go there? Just go there and do that dance of how people have done whatever they've done and doing whatever they're doing. And if you want to occupy your mind, your consciousness, your precious, beautiful life with that nonsense, I'd rather go back to the lesson of Jesus. I want to be about the Father, the Mother's business, Spirit's business. People are working out their own karma. People are working out their own problems. And I trust and I know that whatever God that lives in me, whatever spirit that guides me, is in every single other person. Okay? So I don't have to save them. It's not my job to save them. That job is already taken. So for some of you who are like professional caretakers, I've been one in my life too, the job's been taken. They have a power, they have within them that's operating through them, And it will guide them the same way it has guided every single person on this call. You're in this teaching, you're learning about yourself, you're learning that the problem is not external, you're learning that whatever challenges are going on, they're in your life ultimately to teach you something. And, it's good if we can get the lesson, because if we play the game, well, this has nothing to do with me. If you play that game, well, what I'm experiencing right now, it has nothing to do with me. So we're really in complete denial, right? We create our lives, and we want to say this has nothing to do with me. All right, that's interesting. There's an old saying in religious science circles, life continually gives us lessons, and we either get the lesson or we can ignore it. And guess what happens with that lesson? It comes around again in a different form. There was an old minister who always used to say, same song, different verse, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. So you get the lesson. The thing about this teaching, if you really start to pay attention, you realize, okay, I'm caused in my own experience, I'm bringing in lessons. And when things aren't working, you kind of notice, okay, this isn't working out too well. What's this here to teach me? What am I supposed to learn from this? And if you get the lesson, you get the lesson. If you want to say, oh, this has nothing to do with me, right? I have no part in this. Then what happens is you move through and you try to just not deal with it. Whatever it is that you're supposed to learn will come around another time. And you may not like it because, the universe is a funny thing. It goes forward by means of everybody. This spirit that lives within me lives within you and lives within everybody else. And it's evolving and it's unfolding and it's doing so majestically and perfectly, and it's doing so on such a scale that no one can comprehend it. But none of us are the same. Life is changing everywhere and with everyone, and it's all about growing and expanding. We have within us a power that's forever trying to get our attention. So as we learn to live and commune with this power, there's this noise. People call it the still small voice. I don't think it's so small because there's a sense of either discontent or something. If there's something within you that's restless, that needs to express and grow, it makes itself known to you. And if you're not happy with what you're doing or how you're behaving or anything else, it's there and it's telling you and it's urging you. The whole thing about this creative spirit that we talk about, it wants you to be successful. It wants you to express yourself fully. You're here in this world to learn to express yourself more and more and more. Many of you live your lives, myself included, a smaller version of what we could be. From books I've read when I was younger, Marianne Williamson would say, you're here to express light. You're not supposed to be hiding your light under a bushel. You're here to express. You're not here to be repressed. You're not here to be in relationships, jobs, or situations that are, diminishing you. There's something within you that doesn't, you're not here to be diminished, you're here to expand. And that's what life does. So, we teach you, love is letting go of fear. That was one of the books by Jan Paleski. Learning to trade, we're always here learning to trade in these older, lesser concepts we have for greater. As you get a little bit older, some of you today in the audience are younger. All of life wants you to succeed. Okay, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote many years ago that the dice of God are always loaded, and I didn't like that when I was younger, because I thought, well, my God, what does that mean? What he was trying to say is, Spirit is always wanting you to evolve and to grow, and not hang on to things that are holding you back. So we want to learn to embrace change, and we want to learn and notice what comes up. And when things come up, we want to resist the temptation to blame. One of my great teachers, Shelley, would always say, bring it back to yourself. Whatever the circumstance is, bring it back to you and just notice, okay, this is coming up this week. And what's this trying to, what am I supposed to get from this? I'm not here to be blaming somebody or all of that, okay? So if I have some discomfort, notice it. All thoughts are creative. Louise Hay would say you can heal your life. So let me talk about that for a second. If things are going on in your life in terms of your family situation or your personal health or going on in your work, there's always going to be another way to look at things. And start to notice what it is that you're spinning yourself, and realize, okay, whatever I'm doing, I can turn it around. We teach affirmative prayer here. So when we do affirmative prayer, we're going to state a truth in our prayer process. We're going to first recognize that there's power, and we can use this power. And if we're talking about health, we can declare that there's a perfect pattern of health operating in me and through me. And if something comes up for me and with me that suggests I'm not healthy or something's wrong, this is where we can neutralize that thought, and we can replace whatever the negative state is with the truth, that there's a perfect pattern of health within me. When our relationships are not going the way we want to, we can declare that there is peace and there is harmony. And we can, more than that, we bring ourselves to a point of believing it. We can also, in thinking of other people in our lives, we can realize that they're doing the best that they can, and we can know that they're doing the best they can. And it's for us to have the shift in consciousness. And it's as you find that you have a shift in consciousness, you're going to start to see things change. Louise Hay would say, when you really begin to love yourself, everything starts to change in your world. So the message behind all these different messages is always bring it back to yourself and realize I'm caused to my own experience. I'm creating this in some way. Back to Dr. Jan Paleski, who wrote all these wonderful books. He passed away about a year ago. He's worth looking up and reading, and the work he's reading is really very wonderful, because he's always inviting you to get out of the story you're spinning and come back to peace. His books added a tremendous amount to the New Thought movement. And I was really impressed with the fact that he was using metaphysical and quantum healing in his medical practices with children. Let's see what he would say, like we would say, we do our work in consciousness and mind. We're spiritual beings encountering other spiritual beings every day. We live, move, and have our being in this one energy, this one life. We all live in this one unitary field. So as you look out in the world and you look at other people, you understand that this God that's in me, this spirit that's in me, is in everyone. And it's responding to everyone. And all of us are beings, we're spiritual beings that are evolving. God, the Creator, doesn't respond to us on a basis of demand. You know, when I was younger, I would approach God, I need this, I want this. It doesn't respond to us that way. It's doing something greater. It's responding to us. It's responding to our consciousness. So if you want your life to kind of like go in another direction, then just start working with your thinking, right? Remember Louise Hay, it's the simplest thing. She said it's like cleaning a house. Just work with the thoughts that you're thinking right now, and keep on trading the lesser thoughts for the greater. And soon, it won't take long before things start to shape up. There'll be a quickening if you begin to practice. The people who are in this teaching ultimately are called practitioners, because that's what we do. We practice turning the negative thoughts around to the positive. It's a full-time job for me, by the way. I don't know about anybody else. None of us do it perfectly, but it is a practice. And if you hang out here, you come to the Thursday class, you can do it now from anywhere in the world, or you can watch us on Facebook if you can't be here in person. Just these reminders will help. If you have the wisdom to go, you can turn on TED's Talks. There's so many places you can go to just lift your consciousness up. I mean, you know how you hang out. You know what you watch on TV. You know what you bombard yourself and your consciousness with. Nothing really wrong with it. But if you're doing it all the time, what are you doing that's really uplifting yourself, right? I used to have a great mentor in my father. Every morning I'd call him. You've heard the stories before. He'd say, "Gregory, what exciting challenges do you have today?" Of course, I was calling him with all my drama and all my pain. And it was good to have that person say, "What exciting challenges do you have today?" When I turn on some of these programs now, I used to read a lot. I still read, but now I'm kind of like getting lazy. I'll do YouTube and stuff. But, if I'm allowing my mind to go towards the truth and towards what's good and wonderful, it's great. And when I can take the time out in the morning and meditate and get centered a little bit and remember that I'm one with the one and all the power that I have at my disposal, when I can take time out to remember the truth, then I'm lifting myself out of the story that's going on in the world all the time. When I was quite a bit younger, I was studying the Jan Paleskis who wrote these books, and people have been studying his work all over the world. He coined the phrase attitudinal healing, which I'm just going to briefly mention today. Attitudinal healing is based on the principle that it's not other people or situations that cause us to be upset. Because again, metaphysically speaking, there is no other. Now that one's a tough one, if you're new. Metaphysically speaking, okay, I'm one with you and you're one with me. There is no other. Love your brother as yourself, because we're all in this together. So attitudinal healing is based upon the principle that it's not other people or situations that are causing anything. Rather, it's our own thoughts, our own attitudes and judgments about people and situations that cause our distress. So if you can take that attack part of you back, a part that wants to make people wrong back, and if you can get to the place where you understand these folks are doing the best they can with what they got, things will start to work. You will start to have more peace. And Jan Paleski made the point, if you're living with a lot of distress, and I've recently been through some stress, and I wound up in a hospital it's okay. And I wound up in a hospital a couple nights this past week. And if you have a lot of stress, it leads to disease in your minds and bodies. So whatever it takes for you to stop that process of judging and criticizing, it's worth it. Healing takes place in our lives when we concentrate on changing our own attitudes rather than trying to change other people. Please release the need to change other people. And that's a whole nother lesson in and of itself. We've had one. You can't change people, so within yourself, find the way to release the need to even try. There's a 12-step program, which I used to love hearing this. It was let the hand of, I think it was AA, be there when somebody reaches out for help. You don't go out and help them and fix them, because you can't fix people and help people that don't want to be helped. Release the need to change other people. Thus, the goal of attitudinal healing is inner peace always. And it happens through healing our own minds in the face of our everyday choices and challenges. We do this by being in the moment, by learning to take a pause, by being present. And whatever comes up, where I might be angry, I see one of you and we've had a history, I want to release whatever that is. I can't be in a new moment with any one of you if I'm holding on to a resentment. If you're in marriages and relationships and they're rocky, it's because you're carrying a lot of garbage, and it's tough to have a new moment, a new day with people when you're carrying a lot of stuff. So you really want to take the time to sit down. First of all, do it with yourself to clear it, right? And then you might sit down with your friends, your partners, and listen to one another and find a way to clear it. Release whatever negative story that's living within you. Whatever the resentment or the grudges, wherever we're judging ourselves or others, we want to release that and neutralize it and replace it. Jan Paleski wrote, it's as though there's always two voices, one that's connected with spirit, and the other is when we're in reaction. We make decisions while listening to one of these two voices. It can be very easy to make decisions when the voice of fear is speaking, because that means you're reacting, right? When you're in a place of disconnect, and we have forgotten about this connection we have with this source, and when we're in a place where we're reacting and we're in fear, then you'll be experiencing things like pain and guilt. You'll have judgments going on. The voice of fear always brings some version of suffering and worry and pain. When we come into a teaching like this, the first step of affirmative prayer is recognition. We invite spirit into our awareness, because spirit is always here. Spirit's a part of you. So when you turn to that which is within you, you invite it in, and you maybe meditate a little bit, you connect with it and listen, center ourselves in that awareness. And if you do that, this voice, some people call it the voice of love, the voice of truth, will lead us towards happiness and joy. And it will cause us to let go of many of these things. When we're coming from connection to this source, this voice, this sense helps us believe, because it flows into us and we experience peace and a sense of light. So in Jan Paleski's work, he asks the question, is it not time to say goodbye to guilt and pain and worry? I mean, how is it working for you to have any of that in your life? Anybody here feel guilty? Any of you here worry? I get myself obsessed over things. Where does that lead anybody? Can you tell me? There's no place good that I can see, right? So Jan Paleski asks us, isn't it time to say goodbye to guilt, to pain, and worry and judgment? And I say yes, and choose to believe that love is the only thing that there truly is. See, if you understand again that we're living in a unified world where there is God only, this energy, then we should be focusing on the fact that we live, move, and we have our being in God energy, and focused on the fact that everyone you encounter is an aspect, a part of it. So let's celebrate daily the peace and the joy that lives within us, and let's nurture that flame and make love our only reality. People who are practitioners of this teaching really practice seeing the good. We play with that all the time. We're here to see the good in the God in the good, right? That's a little game we play. If I'm seeing other things, I can do it that way. I can see what's awful. I can do ain't it awful, and I can keep seeing what's missing, and then I'll create a world where everything is, that way. So we want to take it back and begin to see that there is this presence and there is this power, and it's here and it's in all of us. The principles of attitudinal healing, I'll read a few of the 12. The first is the essence of who we are is this God energy, it's love. This might sound like a lot to some of you, but the truth is that you're a spiritual being. You are an individualization of this divine love itself, or spirit. You might not feel like you are if you're new on this call, but you still are an individualization of spirit. And as we practice connecting to it, we strengthen our awareness of the love that's within ourselves. And we become more aware of the love essence that's all around us. As we see love expressed from others, it reflects our own love back to us, as we're all connected and part of this divine energy. So practice paying attention to your essence, who you are. Practice coming from love and connection. When you see yourself coming from anger or judgment, stop. Okay? Or it's your choice. You don't have to, but I'm suggesting stop. Notice wherever you can in any day-to-day, and this reminds me again of that group every week I went to years ago, where the lady would say, are you coming from connection? Or are you reacting? Are you coming from a place where you're knowing who you are? A being of God, one with the one. Notice whether you're coming from connection or whether you're coming from a place of reaction. We're always working on that here, by the way. We're always, trying to step out of the world of reaction and the world of fear and enter this place of connection. We do this without condemning ourselves. I find myself in the weeds often. I just have to gently bring myself back. Louise would say, remembering and forgetting, it's the game we play. So when you remember, you start again. If we find ourselves in fear or in judgment, we start again. We release the troubling idea, we neutralize it if we can, and we start again. We practice coming from love and seeing the good. We move from critical and fearful-based thoughts to love-based thoughts. This is what we do. We are all learning to live and practice this affirmative life. Another healing principle, which is this: having health, maintaining health, you maintain it by having inner peace. If you want to have healing, you've got to find a way to let go of all forms of stress and everything that interferes with having peace. Again, healing is a process of letting go of fear. The second principle of attitudinal healing is we can learn to love ourselves and others by forgiving rather than judging, which I've said about 5 times today. Attitudinal healing maintains that it's not people or circumstances outside ourselves that causes conflict or distress. And I always used to think it was them, not me. But it's clear that they're saying it's not people or circumstances outside ourselves that causes conflict or distress, but rather it's our own thoughts, feelings, and attitudes about people and events. So it's by exploring these thoughts and feelings and attitudes and seeing what comes up for you that you have the opportunity to neutralize them and look at them. And even if you've been doing it for years, you have the ability to deal with it and dismiss them and replace them. We can teach you how to, through affirmative prayer and other approaches. And here's a beautiful line I discovered or rediscovered this weekend. Peace itself is an attribute that's in you. You can never find peace outside. It's an attribute that's in you. So you can always bring yourself to peace. To improve your health overall, bring yourself to a place of inner peace. And in so doing, you're going to neutralize patterns of thoughts that are critical and judgmental. Louise always centered herself and said, I release the pattern within me that's criticizing self. I release the pattern in me that says I'm not okay, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. And I replace these thought patterns with loving ones. One or two more. This one was interesting years ago, where this principle says giving and receiving are the same metaphysically. The real gift you give is not a physical thing, but the idea of love that you're extending to others. And when you give this, we'd say religious scientists or lifters, when you're giving love out everywhere, you never lose it. When you're giving love, it extends out from you and it always is returning to you. So if you're a person who's blessing everybody, every encounter is a holy encounter, and you really genuinely are learning to love life and love people, when you're giving this out, you never lose it. It always extends out and returns to you. So it increases. The more love you have to share with the world, the more it comes back to you. You're creating a charmed life, a blessed life. If you're constricted and you're fearful and you're not extending any love, you're okay, that's where you're at, right? But the thing is, you're wanting to learn to say thank you and express life and gratitude everywhere. Because the more love and gratitude you're able to express in the world, it comes back to you. It never leaves you. Whatever you give out comes back multiplied. Louise would say the supply is endless. So practice lifting and thanking, and practice developing gratitude. Gratitude in itself is causative. It brings forth more and more good in your life. Next, almost last. Jan Paleski wrote, "We can let go of the past, and we can also let go of the future." When we think we have been hurt by someone in the past, what we start to do is build up a story. We build up defenses to protect ourselves from being hurt in the future. And when we're building up stories about people, places, and things, it makes it near impossible for us to experience people in a new moment. If you've decided somebody's no good, and you've made a very powerful decision, right? And I've had resentments in my life, and the thing is, I've learned over the years many things in this teaching, one of which is I refuse to be offended, and I'm never going to take anything personally. I'm going to realize that people are doing the best they can with what they have, and if I have something within me that constitutes a resentment or a judgment, I know it's my responsibility to clear it up. If you're maintaining a fearful past, it's going to cause you to experience a fearful future. So the past and the future become one. The suggestion is let it all go and begin to learn to be here now in this new moment, and with other people, do your best to clear things up. It's very difficult for us to love when we're feeling fear. So we want to release the past. We want to release the anger, the resentments, and forgive everyone. We will experience total love and oneness with all. Inner peace can be reached only when we practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is letting go of the past, and it's therefore the means for correcting our misperceptions and our judgments. I think I'm going to stop with the last one. Jan Paleski will suggest the point of power is always in the present moment, and he would say now is the only time there is, and each instant is forgiving. So each instant is a holy moment, and it's for you to bring your focus into this moment and to drop the story. Each instant is for extending love and forgiving. We can learn to love ourselves best by forgiving rather than judging. We can become love finders rather than fault finders. We can choose to direct ourselves to be peaceful inside. No matter what's happening on the outside, you can say to yourself always, I could see peace instead of this.